Well, good morning again. Well, Jesus is still traveling to Jerusalem, but today it's going to kind of remind us in Scripture again that that's what he's doing. But just by way of recapping here, we're in Luke, and the lectionary has us going through this little period here where Luke has taken bits of Jesus' sayings and parables and whatnot, and he's putting them in a sequence of things happening here. So like in chapter 15, remember, all of 15 was about lost things: lost sheep, lost coin, and a lost son, the prodigal. And chapter 16 was about money, proper uses of money, and how we might view, how the world views things are operating like fair. If money is used to leverage for a place for the future, your place in the future, if you're doing it right for the kingdom, then it seemed to be, it was kind of like, okay, it was a weird sort of parable, where the guy mismanaged the one guy's business, and then you got a pat on the back for it. That's kind of crazy, but we talked about that. And then chapter 17, though, he kind of shifts gears, and he's talking directly to his disciples, and he's talking to them about costs of discipleship. He's talking to them about the things that they're going to encounter as disciples. And so this week is a direct continuation of last week there in chapter 17. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and read it, and we'll just get that continuity out of the way, and then we're going to talk about it for a minute. Because last week we talked about servants, right? You're a disciple and you're a servant, and you sign up to be a servant. And so don't expect just doing what you signed up to do to be getting special pats on the back, because, hey, you said you would do that. That's doing your duty. That's the bare minimum. You don't get extra kudos for just doing what you said you would do. So now, that was kind of sobering, wasn't it? And so now this week, he's going to talk about gratitude, but this comes to us in a weird sort of parable. That's why I want to read it first and get it out there. Here, the reading, beginning in chapter 17, verse 11. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Gospel message for God's people. Thanks be to God. Okay. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. So I just want to poke a few of the common ones and a couple of anecdotal ones, because believe it or not, this is one of those little verses. We all have them. This is one of those little verses that for me just kind of stuck for some reason for years. We all have them. I mean, we pull out our Bible every day, as good Grace Wesleyans do. We pull out our Bible every day, and we're reading through it. And every once in a while we come across a verse that just sticks, right? And then every time we hear it, every time we see it, that particular verse sticks. And sometimes we're just floating along, minding our own business, and that verse pops in our head. You ever had that happen? You're just going through your day, minding your own business, and God sticks a scripture verse in your head. You ever had that happen? Am I the only one? Doesn't happen to y'all? Now, we need to talk about this Christianity thing. It may not be working, friends. I'm sorry. Maybe I need to reevaluate. Anyway, but here they are. They're walking down the road in an area. Now we've talked about the Samaritans before. Good Jews and Samaritans didn't mix from an old disagreement from way back that got way out of hand. It's like one of those little church disagreements that grows. And after you've been a member of the church for a long time, when a new person comes in and they see these two people, after all, they say, "Well, what's the deal with so-and-so and so-and-so?" I know they know each other. They don't seem to get, oh, no, they do not. Do not put them on the same committee. Do not, oh, no. Just trust me, just leave that one alone. Well, why is that? I don't know, but that's the way the Jews and the Samaritans were. Okay, it's a good way of looking at it. So when they were walked through that area, it was shorter to go through Samaria, but, good Jews wouldn't do that. So there was a well-worn path. It was like right on the edge where you're going to maximize the shortcut without going into Samaria. As crazy as that sounds, that's pretty much what it was. So they're going along this little road there, trail, path, I don't know. They're traveling along. And there's a group of guys sitting off the side of the road. I picture it kind of like one of those little homeless encampments. You're driving down the freeway, and during the fall, you can see their tents through the trees because the foliage isn't as thick, right? Well, not so much down here because things are green year-round. If you go up the place they call the North, like Georgia and in South Carolina, in the wintertime, in the fall, things will fall away, and you see through the trees. And you see stuff that's out there, really. That's why I call it fall, because the leaves fall. Anyway, Jesus is traveling on the road, and there's a group of guys off the side of the road. Now, all of us have done this, so I'm going to ask you. It's cool that Dora asked us she took us back in time, because I was going to do that too. But I wasn't going to go quite that far. I was just going to go as far back into your memory as you need to go yourself to remember that time in your life. Could have been you're a kid, teenager, college student, newly married, maybe just started a business, or maybe like some of us 30 or so years ago when the lottery came out, you having those conversations about, man, if I win the lottery, I'm going to, you know the ones you have when you're a kid, that you could sit there and cook up, when I grow up, I'm going to. Or in high school, wouldn't it be cool if we get so-and-so's car and go to so-and-so's mom and dad's cabin on the lake and take some friends? You ever had those conversations? If I could, I would. All those, okay? So imagine this group of 10 lepers. They're sitting around. Leprosy's got them so ostracized from society, they're sitting off to the side of the road outside of town. And they don't even care that there's a Samaritan in the mix. So apparently it was 9 Jewish lepers and 1 Samaritan leper. Now, never no mind the Samaritan and lepers weren't supposed to hang out together. You're a Samaritan, but you're a leper, so come on in. Just fine. You can hang out with us. We can, whatever. You got any new stories? They've been hanging out together, so they all knew each other's stories. Maybe they welcomed the Samaritan because he had new stories. I don't know. That's why y'all let me in. I have new stories. Anyway, so there they are, and they holler at Jesus because while they're sitting there in their little campsite thingy that they have off the side of the road, imagine their conversation. Y'all heard about this Jesus guy? We had an itinerant leper come through last week that was telling us about this Jesus guy that's healing people. If you hear of him and you see him, you need to holler at him and have him come over and try to heal you or something. Because y'all got a good group, and you can maybe get a group discount, get a group healing. So when you have Jesus coming, holler at him, okay? Maybe he'll come over and help you guys. And so here they are, hanging out their little thing off the side of the road. And here comes Jesus coming along. And somehow, they knew it was Jesus. Maybe it popped up as an internet commercial. I don't know. But they knew it was Jesus coming. And so when Jesus shows up, hey, Jesus, Master, Lord, have pity on us. They said all the magic words. Jesus, Master, Lord, have pity on us. And so he did what Jesus does. He didn't even have to touch him. He didn't have to say any special mojo. All he said was, okay, y'all go to the priest and get made clean. And they believed him. He didn't do anything. No special mud, no spit, nothing. Just go. Okay, well, that's the best news they've had in a while, hanging out there in the woods. He may not have wanted to go close because I don't know how long they've been in the woods. I don't tell what they smelled like. Okay, but anyway, he told them to go, and so they all took off. And while they were traveling, while they were on the way, they were healed. There's a very important lesson in that for us. We'll get that in just a minute. And one of the guys goes, wait a minute. And he sees that he's healed, that they're healed. His whole heart, everything changed. Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is really, okay, I got to go back. I got to go back. He turns around and goes back. And we know that part of the story. But the other guys continue on. Now, if they were Jewish, which it seems they were, if they were going to the priest, then they would have to be. But see, there's a particular thing that needed to happen if you were Jewish and you had a condition of any kind that caused you to be termed or deemed unclean. And to be able to participate in regular society, that means go into 7-Eleven with your head held high. And to be able to go in the marketplaces and have dinner with your family, even live in the same house with your parents or wife and kids or whatever, you would have to be pronounced clean. So that means some priest is going to look you over, head to toe, naked, I assume, and make sure you have no more leprosy lesions or none of that stuff present on you, and you look good, and you'd have to do whatever sacrifice, pay whatever temple tax, do whatever was required, and boom, you're clean. Now you can go back out and hang out with your old family and friends if you want to, or your new ones, whatever you want to do, but you're good. So as a Jewish person who was just cleansed from leprosy, they really needed to do that to be able to plug back into society. So for them, it was a religious thing that needed to be done and a societal thing that needed to be done. And it is life-altering in its own. Instead of hanging out in the woods with a bunch of guys, even a Samaritan, you get to go hang out with the family and sleep in a nice bed and have relations with real people, not these crazy guys. Yeah, it was probably important to them to go get pronounced that they were clean. Well, all that may be true. We only hear about the one that came back. And the reason why that story always stuck to me is because in my vocational work previous to being a pastor, I was in sales. Y'all would never guess that, right? One of the things that was important was that we start getting so far up the line, all I care about was numbers. The numbers, the sales numbers, you know, the hitting the targets and the goals and this and that. And so they would use various metrics and things to try to track this, and they'd throw out incentives to try to get people to get out and get more. And then one day I went to a sales seminar where they brought up a story, and it's anecdotal. There's no direct proof, but it still rings true. If you're a salesperson, you'll know this one probably. But back in the 60s or so, there was a guy that worked for Metropolitan Life, a life insurance salesman. And his manager came to him and said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $10 for every time somebody tells you no. Because the guy was complaining about how many people say no, 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 slam the door in his face, hang up the phone, this and that. Couldn't get anybody to talk to him about life insurance. His manager said, I'll tell you, I'll give you $10 every time somebody says no. If you get 1,000 no's, I'll give you $10,000. Now, $10,000 in the 1960s was a lot of money. You can buy a new Corvette for less than 4. Okay? You can get a house for just a little more than that. $10,000 was a good bit of money. So imagine these salespeople racing to get $10,000. Man, all I got to do is get 1,000 people to tell me no. Of course, you get their name and address and phone number that you called, contact them, right? You had documented. But everybody's racing to get those 10,000 no's. Well, curious things happen. You know, there's a mathematical thing in sales called close ratio. And what that means is that if you're a bad salesperson, but you contact enough people, it's like that broken clock. You'll be right twice a day. Eventually, you'll sell something. But if you're a good salesperson, on your way to 1,000 no's, you might get several hundred yeses. Well, I don't know the exact formulations and commission schedules, but I can tell you that if you sold a third of those on the way to the 1,000 no's, if you sold 300 life insurance policies, you probably made a pretty good income as a insurance salesman. So what happened was these people were racing for $10,000 and they were making several hundred grand along the way. And that's kind of the lesson here, is that in the sales thing, it was about, it's not the ones that tell you no, it's not the ones that don't come back and thank God, it's the ones that do. That's the really hidden part of the story. So when that one guy comes back And Jesus said, there's only one? Now, Jesus, do you think that anybody could really tell Jesus no if he wanted him to tell him yes? No. I'm thinking you could convince anybody if he really wanted to, but that was never his stick. His was to win through the heart. His was to win through the free will that we all have. He wanted people to choose God, to choose Jesus, because it's the right choice. And we know it in our heart. We know it's the right choice, so we choose it. Jesus was not surprised that only one came back. And he makes a point of saying it's a Samaritan. So in other words, it's the one that you wouldn't expect is the one that has the most gratitude. I bet there's at least a dozen people in this room, at least a dozen, who can tell you that their gratitude is directly tied to how far down they were when God found them. The farther God has raised you up from that valley in which he found you in, that's the more gratitude you have, because the journey back up, the one you thought was impossible to make, all those conversations you have, if I ever get there, I'm gonna. If I win the lottery, I'm gonna. All those conversations are gone when you're at that low point, when you're at that place where, okay, I'm a Samaritan with leprosy. Bummer. Hey, there's a group of 9 Jews. I wanted to let me kick it with them for a little while. Oh, they will. Cool, because I got new stories. But now Jesus comes along and sends us all away. They're going to get cleansed so they can go back to their life. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what was just done for me? I can have any life I want. I can't go back to the old, or I can do something else. I've got a new life. My brain has been restored. My thinking is restored. My heart is rejuvenated. Everything has changed. Jesus saved me. I need to thank Jesus. I want to follow Jesus. I want to go do. I'm going to go back in a loud voice and thank Jesus. Just one did. Jesus isn't too surprised only 1 in 10 comes back, because he'd been witnessing that. For 3 years, he'd been out teaching in the countryside. You know, I don't know what you think about what it was like for Jesus out there preaching and teaching for 3 years. And maybe you haven't thought at all, except when you come to church and hear it mentioned that that's what he's been doing. But you know, not everybody he talked to converted. We hear the good parts of the story where he had a nice crowd. Some people got healed. Some others got free lunch. A couple times got free lunch. Got to hear some powerful preaching, teaching, healing. Good stuff. But what about all the days when nobody responded? What about the days when Jesus is moving along and he's talking his message and the Pharisees getting away and picking on him about eating kernels of wheat walking through the field? What about those days? You ever think about that? Well, as a salesperson who worked on commission, I think about those dry days. And so when I hear this, I realize there's a lesson in here that we make sure we don't want to miss. Because I believe that there's too many Christians. Even today, we're in an environment right now, friends. We're in an environment right now where it is cool, copacetic, and expected that we can speak about our faith. 3 months ago, that was not the case. A year ago, it definitely was not the case. But today, with what's gone on in our country, at churches, college campuses, and you can take the gold cross you have and pull it out of your shirt and let it hang out the front. You can let people see it. You can go ahead and take that Christian bumper sticker you've been hanging on to, and you stick it on your car now. It's becoming cool to be a Christian. It's okay. People are talking about it. It's okay to be a person of faith and stand up for it. And what's sad for me is that while that's true, and we know it's true, because somewhere in our life, along the way, some of those nines, the ones that never responded to any attempt of the gospel, sharing the gospel, the ones we tried to love on and care with the heart and feet and hands of Christ, that never responded or rejected or pushed back or whatever. The 9 have kept us from pursuing still the 1. Now, in this story, Jesus had the luxury of doing a blanket. All y'all. They all went away, and 1 came back. See, we're usually doing it one-on-one, right? And why is it that over the course of our lifetimes, those 9s keep us, at some point they stop us from pursuing the 1? You know, the 1 lost sheep, the 1 lost coin. Keeping space in our heart and our life open for the lost prodigal son or daughter. What's sad is that when God creates a situation in the world, or circumstances create a situation in the world to where now it's suddenly okay to talk about our faith a little more openly than we could. Now we can. Are we ready for that? Are we going to be looking for the 1 in the 10? The one that's going to turn and follow Jesus, the one that's going to thank God for the blessing, the one that's going to, their life is going to be changed. We're going to get to sit and watch it, witness it, and go, wow, I remember when they first came in, and man, you should have smelled and seen them then. But look at them now. They look and smell and talk and act just like us. Anyway, y'all missed that. The point is, are we still looking for the 1? Or have the 9s conditioned us to just not have very good expectations? Do we get used to, well, Jesus could only close 1 in 10. And I'm like, not near as good as Jesus, so I'm thinking my close ratio is probably 1 in 87,000. Not even close. That's not true, friends. Because see, Jesus said, we will do greater works than him. And how many of you, me included, how many of us believe seriously that we're going to do greater works than Jesus? I'm not that good either, friends, so I get it. But you know what? We're doing things now with our Facebook and internet and letters and texts and TikToks and all the different stuff that people are on. We're doing things with that now, reaching people in quantities and numbers Jesus couldn't have even approached on his best day, in that day, in his day at the time. So yeah, we are doing greater things. We're reaching more people. And he said we would do that. So yes, we are. But yes, we are in the context of if we're still looking for the 1 in 10. I choose to believe Jesus was having a bad day when only 1 out of 10 came back. Because on a good day, it would have been all of them would have come back and thanked him. Most of the time when people did something for people, they had a major change in gratitude. Their attitude changed, and they became grateful for the things that they get in the blessings from God, right? Most everybody we know, you included, who's hearing this, that God's done something for you that you're very grateful for. Well, we show up every week. There's others that maybe don't necessarily know that God's the one doing it, or they're trying to figure out how to get more, or they don't even know what it all means. And that's what we're here for. Because we're looking for the 1 who's also looking. See, that Samaritan man wasn't just sitting there with the Jews hanging out because he couldn't hang out anywhere else. That was only part of it. The other part was as long as he was with others, he had some hope. Exactly how his hope manifested, I'm not sure, but as long as he was with others with a similar problem, that's why we co-associate. Any therapist will tell you, misery loves company because misery likes being around others, because somehow 2 miserable people being together, there's hope somehow in that. Just like 2 people doing good together. There's hope you can do better even still, or you can preserve it or whatever. But there's the commingling, a commiseration, if you will, creates that space, so we come together to do that. So he's out there with them, so they're commingling. But when he heard the message, he responded. Okay, We heard the message and we responded. That's why we're here this morning. Each of us. We heard what Jesus spoke into our heart and we responded. And then 9 other people came along in the course of events and made us comfortable right where we sit. God wants to get us fired back up, friends, and there's going to be things in the life of our church that are going to be happening soon. And so I encourage you all to take a glance over the next week. Take a glance at the 9s in your life. The things that have happened in your life that have caused you to put the brakes on enthusiasm, excitement, initiative in your faith walk. The things that have kind of put the brakes on it, obstacles or whatever. Maybe you put them there. Maybe somebody else put them there. Maybe somebody said something that dissuaded you, hurt your feelings. I don't know. Whatever. Take that obstacle whenever you identify them and identify them, name them, and hand them to God, figuratively, metaphorically. Hand them to God. Because we got to get those things out of our way, friends. Because as a church of found people, if anybody here still thinks they're lost, give me a call or come see me after service. But as a group of found people, we want to get to the place where we are actively looking for the 1 or the 2 or the 5 and 10, whatever. But all of us collectively are going to need to be doing it. God's going to do a mighty work. Again, in the last few weeks, the climate has radically changed in our community, in our public, in our experience right here. And that momentum is going to continue. I don't see that momentum slowing down. Do you? They're still talking about it. I don't see it slowing down. And our church, if we continue doing the things that we're doing, our church is going to have a chance to break into our community in a way to become a community church that's going to change. Not just us and our church, but maybe have an impact on our local community, which is what we want God to do with us anyway. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not investing all these years of my life here at this church for any other reason than to work with all of you to build what we're doing here, one little brick at a time, added to the cornerstone to build a new community church in this area that does for the community what the ones we grew up in did for us. And we can't just say we want to do that. We're going to have to be an active participant in making that happen. This one guy understood what Jesus is doing here is not normal. It's above and beyond. I need to go back and thank him and be a part of that. Now, for the skeptic in the room, because there's got to be one. Yeah, but he's a Samaritan. They weren't going to let him in the temple to get cleansed anyway. Did y'all know that? Okay, that was a punchline. See, he wasn't going to get to go to the temple. His real trip was back to Samaria as a clean person, not back to the temple. The Jews would get cleansed. The Samaritan was never going to get cleansed in the temple. But he knew his real cleansing was taking place in Jesus. And I love the very last part. Because the very last part's exactly why all of us are in this room right now. Just in case you forgot already. Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Now there's healing. Healing occurs when I quit picking at something and let nature take its course, and then it heals. Well is when there's no infection, there's nothing that comes about, no consequences, it really is completely over. Well in the context of not just the leprosy, but what leprosy brings with it. Because you don't get hit with some kind of illness or malady or calamity that so affects your life it knocks you off the rails where you can't hang out with family and friends. You're ostracized. You're out in the woods at a campsite that can only be seen during the fall time. Thank God Jesus walked by in the fall so he could see us. We hollered at him. But do you not think that having to live out there like that, ostracized, does something to you mentally? emotionally. I mean, I imagine the psyche is wrecked. And they didn't even have words for it back then. I mean, they didn't have Sigmund Freud yet that's inventing all these words so you could talk about psychological trauma. They just knew, I don't feel good. I just know I don't feel good. Right? Is that an ambulance? It's fire truck. Okay. So, I asked the authority. The deal is the trauma that comes with what they have with the leprosy, the healing from that, the physical part's fine. The lesions and stuff go away. That's all good. You still have to go back and repair the family relationships. You got to hope that your wife believes you after the priest says you're okay. Right? But Jesus says your faith has made you well, because it was that man's faith that brought him back to Jesus. He was a Samaritan. And like us, he was non-Jewish. He came back to Jesus. He went to the source of where he knew the healing came from. And Jesus said, your faith has made you well. He wasn't just healed, wasn't just cleansed of leprosy. He was made well. And any doctor that's dealt with a patient that's gone through a traumatic health issue of any kind, whether it's from an accident, it's from an invasive kind of illness or something, or it's organ failure, it's anything traumatic that alters the course of a person's life, any doctor will tell you that the healing, the physical part, is only part of the journey. Because the people have to get over their loss of the limb, the loss of the organ, the change in the lifestyle that's occurred because of the incident. Healing, taking away the leprosy, was only part of what these people needed. And Jesus knew that. But only one came back to get the complete healing, the complete wellness. So see, the truth of the matter is, friends, is each of us is probably the 1 in 10. Because we keep coming back. We keep coming back because we're coming back for that last little part in us that we need to be made well. I don't know what you have or what you carry. I know what I have. I know what I carry. I know the physical things that Paul talked about, the thorn in his side and all that, the things that you think just won't go away no matter what. God, will you take this thorn away from me? I've dealt with it for 30 years. Can you take it away? No, why not? Okay. But we still come because we want to hear those words. We want to feel that we're made well. So maybe we're the 1 in 10. Maybe we're the one that was healed of the bad stuff. I don't drink anymore. I don't do drugs anymore. I don't hang around with bad people anymore. I don't waste money anymore. I don't go places I'm not supposed to do anymore. I don't do those anymore. God cleansed me of the outward illness. But I still have me stuck inside here. That's what I need to be made well. So I'm the 10th. I'm the Samaritan that came back. Jesus, I'm back. I like what you did, but I need more. What can we do? And that's where we're at, friends. So is this week as you ponder your 9s, are you the 10th? Is that where you are in the story? I don't know. Jesus only got 1 out of 10 that day. I'm thanking God on the day he got me, I was the one. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.